Okay, so it's the early hours of the morning. I've been having Wi-Fi problems. The Wi-Fi has just been restored, but for the last 4 or 5 hours, it's just been out, and that's frustrating because it may be. I thought I'd been through this. It had been a problem that I'd had a lot, and it kind of phased out and had improved. So I hope this isn't going to sort of uh, be an initiation of that problem again at this time, because obviously I can't just go to a technicians to get sorted if it is an ongoing problem. Anyway, before I get into the main video here, I just want to say a quick word about something that's happened in the last few days, because it's notable. It's got nothing to do with this video, so I'll just make it brief. But there was a big fire disaster in South Korea in the city of Incheon to the south of Seoul. I understand this was a factory fire and almost 40 people were killed in a big inferno. This is the third major fire disaster in South Korea in as many years. There was a fire at a gym in late 2017, and then I believe it was either a hospital or a factory, I can't recall, in the first month of 2018. So this will be the third major fire disaster in as many years. So I think South Korea is going to have a big review of its fire safety standards, as we did with all our big disasters in the 80s and after Grenfell as well. Right, I want to talk about something connected to the lockdown. And incidentally, a quick word about that. In my previous video, I'd mentioned Piers Morgan and had been very critical. It transpires that he himself has now possibly been diagnosed with COVID-19. And it just goes to show that no one is spared from this thing. I still stand by my critique of him, I don't really take that back, but I'm not so vindictive that I would want to wish ill on anyone. I wouldn't wish this disease on anyone, so I hope he recovers. But if he has to stay at home as a result, maybe it'll give him a bit of empathy for those that he was trivializing the lockdown, so maybe it'll put things in context in that sense. But I hope he recovers, and I don't wish this thing on anyone. Um, I want to read a bit about um, a new controversy with South Yorkshire Police. Second controversy during the situation that they have faced. So the article's by Ellen Manning, and the headline is Police Force Apologise After Criticising Man for Wearing Jeans While Doing Exercise in Lockdown. I'll just read out the article, it's not too long. A police force has apologised after it criticised a man for wearing jeans for exercising during the coronavirus lockdown. South Yorkshire Police issued an alert summarising some of the checks officers have been carrying out on people suspected of breaching lockdown restrictions. The message, which has since been removed, said tonight is seen as checking people's reasons for being on the streets. Between essential saunter in jeans as exercise, an essential trip to the shops for egg custards, an essential trip to the cash machine for £20 to use in the morning, we've offered a lot of advice. And this tweet or this message is very sarcastic in its overtones because it's from something called Netpol, and there's a screenshot of it. The wrong kind of jeans for exercise. Honestly, it's becoming embarrassing now. Well, no, South Yorkshire Police, you should be embarrassed for overreach. The message went on to say that anyone who has received a warning would also receive a fine. It had ended up urging people to stick to the restrictions, adding, if you're out at the same time as us, we'll be checking. The message sparked criticism from online commentators concerned at police overstepping their powers, including the Network for Police Monitoring, a coalition that monitors excessive, intimidating, or violent policing. Sharing the alert on Twitter, the group said the wrong kind of jeans for exercise. Excuse me, that's actually from that group, not from the police themselves. I misunderstood that. I thought that was the police sarcastically saying the things they have to police. So the wrong kind of jeans for exercise. Honestly, it's becoming embarrassing now, policing the corona state. Other critics pointed out that no rules have been issued on what people can wear to exercise. South Yorkshire Police, which last month sparked a backlash after one of its officers was filmed telling a father of two that he couldn't use his own front garden in Rotherham. I made a video about that one during lockdown, has since apologised for the alert. Chief Superintendent Sean Morley said a message has been issued on SYP alert, which is not in keeping with our approach. We've been very clear on our expectations that officers should engage and encourage residents on new restrictions. Further training will be provided to the officer to ensure they are clear on our position. We apologise for any confusion caused by this alert. Last week, data released by the National Police Chiefs Council (NPCC) showed that more than 9,000 fines have been issued across England and Wales for people breaking lockdown restrictions. Okay, a few things to say about this. Firstly, it's once again South Yorkshire Police. So it does seem to be that this is not a generic problem with police forces. It seems to be the same forces. Um, Derbyshire Police has also attracted criticism for overreach. Other forces haven't had the same level of criticism. I have to say, Northumbria Police, my local force here in the northeast, I've no major complaints from what I've seen. I can't say that they've been heavy-handed or excessive. I haven't heard of any sort of cases of that. But South Yorkshire Police, they're the force that polices the metropolitan county of South Yorkshire, which is basically Greater Sheffield. Um, this sort of stuff. Like last month, I made a video on that the officer who came into the man's garden and she actually reprimanded him. Um, this sort of thing is really going to anger people. They shouldn't be apologizing for confusion. They should be apologizing for overreach. This isn't a case of confusion. This is a case of overreach. And I need to keep my voice down because it's late. But there's no excuses. In the beginning, my thinking was, okay, well, this is an unprecedented situation. Forces are going to have to adapt. And they've never been in this situation before. But frankly, it's hard not to believe that some forces are using Corona as an excuse to basically abuse their powers. Because let's face it, monitoring what people is wearing or monitoring what they're buying for food is a lot easier than taking on thugs. And I am not downplaying police work. I think they have a very difficult job, generally speaking. But this particular force has been subject to two major scandals in the past. One over Hillsborough, their handling of the Hillsborough disaster, and secondly over their handling of the grooming gangs scandal, which impacted Rotherham and impacted other towns across the country, but particularly Rotherham. So South Yorkshire Police, I think, have damaged a lot of trust over the years, and behaviour like this is only going to anger people. Um, There is no reason whatsoever that a police officer should be monitoring what someone is wearing. It's ridiculous. Um, the restrictions are that people are allowed outside for food and exercise. Now, the police need to respect this. The only things that they should be policing should be people who are gathering in groups and thereby breaking restrictions, people having parties and thereby breaking restrictions, certainly generic crime, common assault, theft, that sort of thing, certainly assaulting officers. I mean, that is the other side, and that's why I'm sympathetic to the police on that level, because they have been subject to that sort of personal abuse, people spitting at them and so on. There's been some disgusting cases. But, reprimanding people for what they're wearing is a blatant abuse of their power, and there is no excuse. And I think, frankly, Sean Morley and his force, they need to stop making these apologies and they need to get their act together. Because if they behave this way during a national crisis, people are going to think the anger is going to mount. People are going to think they're just taking advantage of it to abuse their power. And I'm not sure that's exactly what they're doing. I think it's just that they've got sloppy training or they are not considering the consequences of how they are policing. So I don't necessarily think they're deliberately, getting some sort of kick out of overreach. However, they are um, they are breaching this idea of policing by consent. I made a video about that. In this country, we have policing by consent. That is to say that the public give the police powers. Well, you could say the government gives the police powers, but the government that we elect gives the police powers. It's policing by consent. That is, we enable these people to have certain powers to keep the public safe, the power of arrest, the power of monitoring the public for things they shouldn't be doing. But we are not a police state. This is an extremely important point. extremely important. And I think that South Yorkshire Police should get a lot of criticism for this. I really don't have much sympathy. They can't say, oh, these are unprecedented circumstances and this is why we're doing this, because not every force is doing it. It's not like we're hearing this from every single police force in the country, in which case it would be a generic confusion. It's particular police forces clearly need to get their act together and stop abusing their powers. I mean, I would be pretty angry if I was, carrying out my democratic right to go out and get food, and then I was stopped and they wanted to check what was in my bag. I would not be happy about that. So the police need to be very aware of how this comes across, particularly, and this is something that's particularly an issue with South Yorkshire Police. People will look at that and say, well, where were you when the grooming gangs were operating? Nowhere to be seen. They were notoriously slow to act on that. And now, when we're in this situation, they're everywhere. So there will be real contentions among the public about what the police are prioritizing. We are in a national situation where there's almost 30,000 people have died. So I do support the police, imposing, or rather, yeah, imposing the government's regulations. But they have to do it in the right way. There is no excuse for the police to be checking what people are buying to eat, checking people's bags, as Northamptonshire Constabulary or Police, I'm not sure what their formal name is, um, they had to apologise for that. This is the second time South Yorkshire Police have had to apologise. I think the public don't want to hear apologies. They want to see the police not engaging in these sort of tactics. There's no excuse for it. Um, and South Yorkshire Police need to remember that we are not a police state, and the coronavirus is not an excuse for them to act like we are in a police state. So, an apology is not good enough. Just stop doing it. Stop overreaching your power. Um, I understand they've got a difficult job. I understand they're under pressure. There really is no excuse for, threatening to fine someone because they're wearing jeans. That's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Um, they should be prioritizing groups of youths or groups of whoever gathering together. Because I know there have been incidents. For example, in Greater Manchester, there was an estimated over 600 parties apparently recorded in Greater Manchester. So clearly, there are selfish people who just don't care and they don't understand that by breaking the regulations, they are potentially putting lives in danger and they're adding pressure to the NHS. So I'm all for the police cracking down on those sort of situations. But I'm concerned about how they're policing individuals in this way. And instead of apologizing, they need to be changing their attitude. They need to be changing their behavior. And it's good that there are independent watchdogs that exist. I'll name that group again. I'm going to look them up afterwards. Um, because unfortunately, when the police behave this way, then such groups are necessary. Um, the group is called the Network for Police Monitoring. I mean, I don't think we have as big a problem in this country as in the United States. We don't have the same level of underlying problems with police brutality. And there are situations where there are some really bad things that happen to the police and they don't always get justice. I heard about before the lockdown, a drunk woman actually seriously injured an officer's spine to the point where he had permanent injuries, and she wasn't even arrested for assault at the time. So, it works both ways. The police do get a lot of abuse, and, an officer who's just doing their job and has to put up with some drunk job. I've directly seen it. Before the lockdown, I was sort of a witness to a situation and I saw the sort of abuse the police get. So I am not anti-police. I'm sympathetic to the pressures that they face. But they need to understand that they are in a position of power. And when they're perceived to be abusing that power, it's really going to not only anger the public, scare the public. We are not a police state. And South Yorkshire Police needs to remember that. Um, Coronavirus is not an excuse for them to be abusing their position. It's just not. That's not confusion. That's an abuse of power. So, I'll round it up there. Incidentally, there was one other thing I wanted to mention. I said earlier that the lockdown's having more impact on some people than others. I've got a situation myself. My bank card expires, and actually, if anyone knows an answer to this, I'd appreciate some feedback if you've watched up to this point. My bank card expires. I'm with Nationwide. What do I do? The banks are closed. And my phone contract, I can't afford to make long phone calls, so I can't afford to phone up and be kept on a line. Supposed to be that a new card arrives automatically, but we're now in the third day of the month, fourth day, and that hasn't happened. I'll see what happens today. It's Monday. Um, but if I can't get access to money, I can't get food. And if South Yorkshire Police, by the way, and other forces are fining people for, if someone's getting out a £20 note, that's not against the regulations. They may need that £20 in order to buy food. So there's a lot of things that people are not considering, and I think the police are really they need to be very careful because public anger will grow. There's been warnings that there will be social unrest in the summer because of the rise in unemployment and a range of other factors. Time will tell if that happens or not. Certainly, the police need to have the public on their side at this time. And if they keep giving the public reasons to be disillusioned or mistrustful, then it's not going to help police public relations. So not good enough, South Yorkshire Police. This is the second time. I don't think they could put that down to misunderstanding. It's just overreach.